It really, that would slow him down far more than his performance here looks, and it looks that perhaps that was a venison smoke screen. I'm not quite sure why they were so hot in the warm-up, but he is really not losing much to Senna at all. I would say basically he's right with him.
Well, we are right with Michael Schumacher now, and Senna, my goodness, I just saw him plunge off to the right, and Senna has joined Pietro Lamy and JJ Letter in a shattered motor car. You can see the debris on the right. What on earth happened there? I don't know. Whether it was a sudden loss of downforce for some reason, but Senna is still in the car. It means to say, of course, that Schumacher has gone into the lead, but the important thing is now, how is Ayrton Senna, with the marshals already waving the yellow flag? No passing.
Yes, this looks very severe indeed, I must say. It looks like this corner that Senna was going around is absolutely flat out. It's 185 miles an hour. We really should be seeing some medical attention coming quickly here to the Williams with Senna. His head is very still in that car. The car has clearly gone straight on. This is a little bit like the accident that beset. He really needs help in that car. There is nobody coming to him at the moment. As his head moved, I think I just saw his head move a little bit then. The race has been stopped. The red flag is out. This looks a little bit like a problem with the car, as beset Berger at this very point 4 years ago in his Ferrari.
And it's where Nelson Piquet went off in the Williams some years ago in similar circumstances, and thank heavens he was all right. I must say I have concern at the fact that A, Senna is sitting in the car still, not moving, and B, surprisingly, there is not a lot of action. And here it is. Now look, he's going into the left-hander tremendously fast, and he runs wide and goes straight off. Doesn't even attempt to take the corner. And, well, I say that's about 190 miles an hour at that point, the exit from the Tamburello. They're still building up speed, but it was not very far short of 200 miles an hour. You can see the debris pouring off the car as Gerhard Berger comes through in the Ferrari.
Yes,
and already
the point where I think Gerhard Berger went off, John, a couple of years ago.
Berger went off, and well, we don't know the circumstances of Senna's accident at this point, but certainly when Berger went off, he hit the wall very, very hard. I think, in fact, it was maybe a little earlier in the corner. But nonetheless, this Tamburello corner, it is flat out. It's 190 miles an hour. And if you have a problem there and go off on the outside of the circuit, there are those retaining walls, but they're hard, they are concrete. And you saw how unyielding the impact was. But the car bounced off, and a lot of energy was dissipated in the first contact. But again, Professor Watkins and the medical team here in San Marino working on Senna, trying to stabilize. We saw movement from his head, so that's a very positive indication. But yet again, really, I've never been to a Grand Prix as a competitor or in a role as a commentator where I've seen so much. I don't know, I'm just running a lot of words. Michael Schumacher out of the car. His car stopped on the start-finish line. And this really most sad and dramatic weekend for Formula One. And now again, doctors, helmet off, Professor Watkins in attendance, and all the medical crew as they remove Ayrton from his car and take him straight to the medical center where his attention will be given full from the medical team.
The gap between Schumacher and Senna at start-finish was 0.7 of a second, so Schumacher was right behind the Williams driver. Then it was Gerhard Berger who was a further 3.6 seconds adrift, but Damon Hill was actually closing in on the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. Then it was Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Mika Häkkinen. The race is stopped after 6 laps because of a frantic accident with Ayrton Senna. It's the third big accident, as John said, during this Grand Prix weekend with Formula One cars. And there we have a look into the Williams garage, and they are very anxious to know what happened with their car. And I think, John, also Damon Hill would really like to know what happened here.
Well, we've seen 3, absolutely awful accidents this weekend. We've also seen a lot of cars spinning throughout the weekend. Now, in the case of Ruben Barrichello, Ruben's accepted responsibility for his accident. We don't know yet what was the cause of the tragic accident for Roland Ratzenberger, and equally now with Ayrton Senna. The car had just entered the corner, was coming up to close to apex and then onto the exit, and the car just failed to take it. In fact, from the backward view that I saw, it appeared to me that the car just suddenly started to veer to the right, and the man that really would have had the best sight of it would have been Michael Schumacher, who was probably only 5 or 6 car lengths behind.
John, I can't remember a Grand Prix where we had so many stoppages as this weekend, to be honest. Well, again, we're looking into the Williams garage. There's the spare car, which is not being used for this race, and there again, the scene of the accident. A lot of medical people in attendance. Sid Watkins, very close to Ayrton Senna, probably talking to him. And let's just wait and see what happens, or this is going to take a long time to restart. So I don't know what Paris wants to be doing, but there's not a lot of things happening here for the next God knows how many minutes. There's the Williams mechanics. Well, that must be dreadful, John.
Well, in fact, we've seen the helicopter, I think, is coming in. The medical helicopter has landed now on the circuit, and Ayrton Senna is going to be transferred, I think, directly to hospital in Bologna rather than taking him to the medical centre at the circuit. So obviously this incident is a serious one, and the judgment by Professor Watkins and the medical team here at the San Marino circuit is that is the best steps to take. And again, looking into the Williams pits, it's always a very difficult moment for a team when they've had an incident like this on and around the circuit. So the team working away, and very quickly he'll be transferred into the ambulance that's waiting, then taken to the helicopter and taken to the safety of Bologna, to the hospital there.
Well, Keke Rosberg just walked in to tell us that with JJ Leto everything is okay. So that is some positive news, and we're awaiting news, I should say, on what happened to Ayrton Senna's car, if we can find that out, and what happened to Ayrton Senna himself.
Well, the helicopter we see there on the circuit waiting, and the various forms of stretcher that they use, and now there's a saline drip has been applied. That's just to act as a stabilizer. So work being carried out by the side of the track by the medical team at Imola, and this is a part of the circuit where, in fact, on a number of occasions we've seen very severe, spectacular accidents. Way back, I think in '87, Nelson Piquet, when he was driving for the Williams team, went off and hit the wall. Gerhard Berger did it, Michele Alboreto did it. So it is a part of the circuit which is tremendous from a driver's point of view. But of course, at the very, very high speeds that Grand Prix cars are capable of, plus the amount of downforce and grip that a car does generate. Now, if something goes wrong in the corner where you've got that very high speed with a very high load, and for some reason that load disappears quickly, then that's when a driver does have a big problem.
John, we talked about this all yesterday with Dave Price, and again we see the survival cell of that car being absolutely intact.
Yes, indeed, and the car has done its job superbly. An impact of that speed, I mean, the figures, I don't even know, I wouldn't even want to guess the kind of G-force that initial impact would have generated, but it would have been extremely high, believe me. But of course, the part of a driver that appears to become much, much more vulnerable, and has certainly been the case this year, is the area around the neck, and that's the area I'm sure that everybody is very concerned about at this present time. Now, Eddie Irvine, you were doing a test with the Jordan team earlier in the season at Manicure, and you went backwards at pretty high speed into a wall. You got a bit of a whiplash, but you didn't have any really severe injury that prevented you from getting back into the car.
No, I was very lucky because I'm quite tall, so my back was the whole way along the back of the monocoque, and my head was actually touching the monocoque, so there was no way of whiplash or anything like that. But some of the guys aren't quite as tall, and they sit a bit further forward in the car, so when the car was in backwards, it's a big problem for them because they don't really, their head's going to move a bit, and that bit can be quite important.
John, this is ridiculous. I mean, how can that LaRousse get out of the pits when there's a red flag?
Well, I'm gobsmacked. I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen at any time in my life, that a Grand Prix car is allowed when the course is under a red. Everybody is stopped on the pit lane, and Comas and LaRousse has driven out, and he drove out. We heard him leaving the pits at pretty much full speed, and he came around Camberello corner. I mean, this is the most bizarre weekend at a Grand Prix I can remember. I don't want to make any more comment because I'm sure I'll say something that's incorrect.
Ayrton Senna, I think, pretty much being transferred straight into the helicopter and then off to hospital in Bologna, where he will be checked over, and all the work that needs to be done on him has to be done. And they've taken his overalls off, and they're trying to probably be as careful as they can. John, even if they in the slightest possible way suspect any neck damage, they are oh so careful with you, aren't they?
Yes, indeed. It's a very vulnerable part of the human body, and of course, in just withdrawing a driver from the cockpit of a car, that in itself has got to be done extremely carefully. And it often is the case where in an incident, and when marshals arrive in their desire to help a driver as quickly as possible, in fact, it's better not to do anything until the specialists arrive. The simple task of removing a helmet in itself is not necessarily a simple task. Of course, all the marshals are equipped with knives to cut through the strap that retains the helmet, but it is something that needs to be done with great knowledge and care to ensure that if there is an injury to the spine or to the neck, that there isn't any residual injury in addition.
Well, if you look at the right front corner, John, is completely taken off the car. I don't think Ayrton got hit by something like a wheel, which apparently was the case in Roland's accident.
I think, again, it's only speculative. We don't know enough. We haven't seen from the camera angles precisely, first of all, what caused the car to go off the circuit, and secondly, the camera view from looking up to Tamburello, the car actually was out of sight. But one thing is for sure, that with the construction of these current cars, while the driver in the safety cell is kept very safe, if you take off the wheels and suspension in that corner, it is possible in a very severe impact for the wheel to come into contact with the driver's head, or the wall, in fact, to come into contact. So we don't know, and it is very, very speculative indeed to consider what may or may not have been the question. So we're sitting here looking at something which is indeed very serious, and it is not right for us to speculate on the extent of the injuries to Senna, or in fact what was the cause of the accident in the